We have a couple remaining tidbits related to data visualization specifically before we shift to process items. In his book, Good Charts, Scott Baronato talks about the importance of standardizing to ensure our audience can absorb the information in front of them as quickly as possible. He quotes a Harvard-educated psychiatrist, John Leaf, MD, who according to his website is a specialist in the interface of psychiatry, neurology, and medicine. Dr. Leaf says, "The brain has many interacting pathways and loops that create expectations with different probabilities from our previous experiences. The context and movement in the scene stimulate the brain to prioritize possible future events. It gathers information and then at some point guesses on what is happening and creates the visual scene for our perception. This can be correct or an error. The unexpected event is more difficult to process because of the bias toward what has occurred recently and repetitively. I took the liberty of bolding the words that are most relevant to the impact of a lack of standardization. Simply put, the more variation we put into our communications to our audiences, the more difficult we make them to process. Our consumers' brains will come to expect to have to figure out what it is they're looking at every time. Take the two example charts here. In the first, the bold border around the shapes is meant to denote items on the critical path. In the second, the bold border is meant to illustrate items that are complete. If these two charts were presented to the same audience by two different resources at different times, it will throw the readers off. If how we communicate visually is a free-for-all, the viewers will never be able to develop a fluency for what a color or any other visual attribute means, because they can mean anything. Their brains are conditioned to have to go through a learning step first, where they have to figure out how to read the chart before they can begin to attempt to consume the data within it. This is their expectation, that every time a visual is put in front of them, they very likely won't know how to read it without some time to study. As we said in our last video, that's the most obvious measure of effectiveness of visual communication, how quickly our audience can read it. If they have to study it first, you've done them a disservice as the communicator. With a little effort to develop some standardization, the brains of your consumers will change to expect to skip the learning step and jump straight to the information because you will have enabled their fluency in the visual language you've created. Let's next discuss explanatory versus exploratory visuals, which is also important to understand in order to set and then meet the expectations of our audience. Do you know whether the people you're presenting your charts to today are expecting to have to analyze what it is you've put in front of them in order to pull out what's important? Or are they expecting you to have already done that analytical work? Now that I've asked this, you're probably instantly realizing how foundational this question is. In my own experience as a project manager, I never asked this prior to creating a visual, and in retrospect, it hurt the effectiveness and efficiency of my communications. If my audience knows that I'm showing them the important stuff, the things they need to know about to make decisions from, they'll probably relax their minds a little and go along with the story. If the expectation is analysis, I'll have to show up with a lot more data and information to enable that exercise. Based on what I said about my own past mistakes, I've probably presented many visuals that were meant to help explain things to my audience, and instead they ended up exploring. The opposite is certainly true as well, and this is only natural. If I don't have an expectation about what I should be doing with this visual, as a consumer, I'll probably be doing a little of both. After hearing about data ink, chart junk, pre-attentive attributes, the importance of simplicity, and setting your audience's expectations, you're probably motivated and ready to circle back to see if you can make some improvements. You know now and can state very simply that communication should be designed for optimal readability, which cuts risk and cost. So here are a few suggestions about where to start. First, you'll need to achieve a collective recognition of the current state of affairs. To achieve this, I personally believe all you need to do is ask the question as to whether or not the data visualizations used in planning today were purposefully and skillfully designed. If the answer is no, politely and humbly propose that you or someone else put some time into it. If you get approval to do that at any level, you've just engaged in a renewed design phase. So what now? Baronato gives us a good formula here in suggesting we talk and listen in various forms. Step 1. Talk it through with a trusted colleague or mentor. If you're not sure what it is you want or need to do, or you just want to bounce thoughts off another mind, two are almost always better than one. Schedule some time with someone you respect to talk things through. Although this may not give you 100% clarity, you should be able to achieve some level of progress toward the goal, just through some spitballing. Step 2. Get specific. Make sure that you've written down what it is you're trying to communicate in bullet form. Why, where, how, and to whom at a minimum. This will allow any conversations you have to be much more productive. Step 3. Listen and take notes. In my experience, the smartest people I've ever met are as smart as they are because they know they don't know everything. They realize there is always something to learn, and for that reason are good listeners. Baronato also makes a great point by recommending that you attempt to pay attention to how you describe how you envision the information. I'll quote him here. "The visual words and phrases that describe how you see the ideas," close quote, can help give you direction on what may be your approach to the visual. Step 4. Whiteboard. As you begin to narrow down how you think you want to create your visuals, it's time to sketch. This may even be happening during your conversations. Make sure you have a whiteboard and some different colored markers available to help you iterate in real time. Step 5. Paired prototyping. Probably the most important exercise and one that needs to be considered a part of your design phase. Try to avoid doing this as a part of any actual presentation of real data. Inevitably, you'll be presenting your ideas to your audience and they may be requesting changes. Paired prototyping allows your audience, the people who will consume the information, to team with you, the data, tools, and visualization expert, so that you can iterate and optimize on the final product. This is super easy in OnePager. I like to have OnePager up on a screen in the room, and then my source file open on my laptop. As changes arise, even in the data, I can simply update my visual and see the impact those changes have. This also helps the audience get to know what the tool I'm using can and cannot do, and helps them buy into the design you've brought to them. In the end, it will largely be your design, but allowing them to put their stamp on it will make them feel like they can jump right into the data once it's presented in the real form. One last thing to consider. You might have a visual today that is absolutely stuffed to the gills with data and information. It became that way out of necessity. You would never want to begin to parse out the data into more than one chart because creating and maintaining a single chart is time-consuming enough. But now that you have OnePager, it might be time to reconsider. One way to simplify things is to begin to break down your current single and very complex visual into several more simple charts. Remember, the goal of the exercise is to make sure that the visuals you're putting in front of your audience are getting the information they need across as quickly and efficiently as possible. If your audience has to study your communications in order to consume them, you've done them a disservice. Let Baronato's words echo in your head. Simplicity is courageous. In the end, everyone you're communicating to should be better, more often, and more broadly informed than they ever have been. As your company improves on how its actuals measure against its estimated outcomes, they will have you to thank. Please visit our other videos at onepager.com/support. Or if you have a question, please send us an email at support@onepager.com and we'll be happy to assist you.